Today we are going to talk about the Hale farm. Although this property may look like a normal 17th century house, it has a very intriguing history. This house was built in 1694 for Reverend John Hale, but he was a very important figure before this farm was built. John Hale was a minister for Beverly's first parish church that was built in 1650 when the people of Bass Riverside petitioned to have their own church, although they were not considered their own town yet. The place that is now Beverly was named Bass Riverside and was still a part of Salem. Just 4 years after John Hale moved to Bass Riverside in 1664, they were able to separate from Salem and become their own town of Beverly. John Hale supported and even took part in the Salem witch trials of 1692. He testified against multiple supposed witches during this time. Reverend Samuel Parris turned to Hale when his young daughter, Elizabeth Parris, and niece Abigail Williams became suspected of witchcraft. John was called upon to inspect witches a few times throughout his life. He would tell them to pray before moving forward with the trials. Because he saw supposed witches firsthand, he was an early believer that the witch trials should move forward. One witch trial case that John Hale testified for was the case of Sarah Bishop being a witch. She was accused of witchcraft on April 21st, 1692. The reason people thought that she was a witch was because she had an unlicensed tavern that Christian Trask would complain about. A few years later, Trask was found dead, her throat cut. People assumed that it was Sarah who killed her, but it could have been suicide. Hale referred to Sarah Bishop as Goody Bishop, wife of Edward Bishop. John Hale was one of the biggest supporters of the witch trials, but this immediately came to a stop when Mary Herrick accused Sarah Noyes, John's wife, of being a witch. After Sarah was accused of being a witch, John Hale dictated that Beverly would no longer be participating or be involved at all with the Salem witch trials. Later on, John Hale wrote a book called A Modest Inquiry into the Nature of Witchcraft that read his account of the events of the witch trials in 1692. He wrote this book in 1697 here in the Hale farmhouse. John Hale was the minister of Beverly's first parish church for over 30 years. Then he died in Beverly in 1700. He had a total of 6 children and was married 3 times. This house and land was passed down the family until it was sold by the daughters of Robert Hale Bancroft in 1937 to the Beverly Historical Society. The last descendants of John Hale to live in this house were Robert's daughters, Elizabeth and Eleanor Bancroft. The Hale farm has seen so much as history went on. During slavery times, Colonial Robert Hale had a slave family working on the property. Their names were Rose, Caesar, Aesop, and Hector. So as you can see, the Hale farm was so much more than a farm. It also holds great historical significance.